No alarms sounded when the invasion began. There were no fleets descending from orbit, no weapons fired from moon bases, no warnings transmitted across diplomatic channels. The people of Earth continued their lives unaware, working, sleeping, dreaming, while far above them in the cold shadows of deep space, the Zalari made their move. They called themselves Mind. A telepathic species evolved on the fog-wrapped world of Garn. The Zalari prided themselves on their superior mental network. With enormous brains and sensitive thought organs, it conquered lesser species not by force of arms, but by infiltrating their minds. Subtle, quiet, and devastatingly effective. The Zalari method left no scorched earth behind, only compliant populations that never realized they'd been conquered to them. Humanity was a mystery, a species of contradictions. Emotionally volatile, fiercely imaginative, prone to sudden violence yet capable of compassion so intense it defied logic. And worse still, humanity was resistant to telepathic probes, not immune. Just elusive, slippery, fragmented. Most species' minds were like open books. Humans, however, were more like locked chests, buried in shifting sands. The Galactic Council, wary of Earth's growing power and influence, authorized the Zalari to pacify the Terran threat before it matures. The method. Operation Echo, a bold experiment to dive directly into the human subconscious and extract the mental architecture that made them so dangerous. Not just memories, but dreams. The unfiltered essence of a species. 100 Zalari mindwalkers were connected via psychic relay. They bypassed Earth's surface defenses and tapped directly into the sleeping minds of targeted individuals. Soldiers, poets, scientists, even children. They expected chaos, disorganization, perhaps emotional residue and primitive fears. And, at first, that's what they got. Streams of images flowed into their consciousness, fragmented visions of ancient forests, ruined cities, childhood bedrooms, and wars long past. They watched humanity's history unfold, not through words, but emotion. The warmth of a father's hug, the agony of a battlefield, the terror of falling, the beauty of flight. It was overwhelming but beautiful. To the Zalari, it was intoxicating. So much depth, so much raw power. They believed they were on the verge of understanding the core of humanity, of distilling its emotional algorithms into something predictable, controllable. Then Node 6 screamed. It was a long, piercing psychic. Scream sharp enough to rupture the minds of two nearby researchers. His feed cut out midstream. His body convulsed, his brain tissue liquefied in seconds. Medical personnel couldn't explain it, but it didn't stop there. Node 12 followed 2 hours later, diving into the mind of a young Terran combat medic. The Mindwalker reported seeing nothing, just endless hallways and distant weeping. Then, burning white eyes, and silence. His consciousness never returned. By the end of the third day, 14 of the 100 nodes were dead. All had attempted to go deeper, past the surface dreams, into the subconscious layers where instinct, trauma, identity resided. And something had noticed. It wasn't just passive memory anymore. The dreams had shifted in tone. No longer random, they had become hostile, constructed, defended. Like the mind had recognized a foreign presence and built walls, then weapons, then traps. What the Zalari didn't realize was that humans, over thousands of years, had forged their minds in a crucible of nightmares, war, plague, loss, survival on a world that was itself trying to kill them. Their subconscious wasn't just a place of fantasy. It was a battlefield built by necessity. And when someone invaded, it responded as it had been trained with aggression, adaptation, and merciless precision. The Zalari had entered the dream thinking they were gods peering into a zoo instead. They found themselves inside the cage, and something in there had already picked up the scent of intruders. Within the cold psychic chambers of the Garn facility, unease settled like dust. Surviving mindwalkers began reporting persistent echoes, repeated dream symbols, figures looking back at them. Some began hallucinating during waking hours and deep in the echoing channels of their shared minlink. One phrase began to repeat, whispered by countless human voices across the stars. "We see you." The Zalari had no word for terror. In their ancient structured tongue, fear was a tool, not a sensation. Panic was for prey. But what now spread through the Mindwalker ranks had no better definition. The loss of the initial psychonodes had been tragic, rare, yes, but not unheard of. Occasionally a mind resisted with forceful emotion or fractured memory. But this was different. The pattern had changed. The dreams were no longer fragmented or passive. They were evolving, reacting, building defenses with every incursion. Worse, they were striking back. Mindwalker, you're all. One of the most experienced dream divers volunteered to test the theory. She selected a subject carefully, a young woman. From a quiet town in rural Canada, a school teacher, peaceful and nonviolent, a perfect target for observation. She descended into the dream via the psychic relay. At first, it was calm, a lakeside cabin, fireflies, the warmth of a crackling hearth. It was serene, even beautiful. She moved cautiously, admiring the scenery. Then, the fireflies stopped moving. The lake turned black. The cabin door creaked open. The shadows inside grinned. Ural tried to retreat, but the dream twisted around her like a trap sprung shut. From behind the trees came figures dressed in old Earth military uniforms. Not from one war, but many World War I gas masks, Vietnam jungle fatigues, Cold War insignias, body armor from Mars insurgencies yet to come. They marched with purpose. They didn't speak, and they saw her. Earl screamed as something slashed into her consciousness. Her real body convulsed in the psychic chamber, bleeding from her eyes. The mental bridge collapsed, but not before she transmitted a single word to the rest of the team: constructed. The dreams were defended now, designed, each one tailored. To the specific intruder, humans, even in sleep, had begun to identify the foreign presence. And instead of submitting, they had turned their subconscious into a weaponized maze. It wasn't defense anymore. It was warfare. The Zalari leadership panicked. They initiated Dreamfire Protocol, a rarely used failsafe for psychic contamination. All exposed nodes were placed in stasis. Severance orders were issued, psychic walls were raised. Every available researcher was recalled from human contact zones, but the damage was done by then. Nearly a third of the Mindwalker units had been consumed, not killed, consumed. Their minds were not destroyed by force, but overwritten. Their personalities eroded, replaced by symbols, fragments of language, Terran battle cries, and dialects long dead. Some began muttering Earth nursery rhymes while awake. Others stared at walls and drew strange sigils, stylized wolves, burning trees and human eyes. The worst were the ones who dreamed with their eyes open. Each time they closed their eyelids, they flinched violently. One tried to claw out their optical nerves. Another smashed their skull against a wall until the echo of his thoughts finally stopped. What was most terrifying, however, wasn't the human mind's ability to retaliate. It was that they were doing it unconsciously. The humans weren't deliberately fighting back. Their mental response was instinct. The self-defense wasn't coordinated or intentional. It was a reflex, something ancient and automatic. A subconscious immune system evolved on a planet so hostile, even the dreams had teeth. The Zalari realized something horrifying. Humanity didn't dream for pleasure. They dreamed to survive, and those dreams remembered. Everything. The Zalari had touched minds filled with 1,000 generations of trauma, wars, betrayals, near extinctions, personal losses that echoed across bloodlines. These weren't just memories. They were ancestral scars turned into mental fortresses, and once the Mindwalkers had entered, those fortresses locked from the inside soon. Independent dreamers across Earth began reporting strange events, lucid visions of watchers trying to observe them. Some described silvery shadows that melted under gaze. Human psychics, rare but real, began to feel an intrusion. Government psychic defense agencies stirred from decades of silence, and at the heart of it all, The mind of a single human child, dreaming in a hospital bed in Nairobi, turned sharply in her sleep and whispered words she had never learned. "You're not alone in here." It was supposed to be a one-way mirror. The Zalari believed they're psychic. Technology was flawless, a bridge that allowed them to silently walk the minds of other species without ever being seen. They entered dreams like shadows, extracting thoughts, weaknesses, and emotional triggers to be cataloged and used. But now the bridge was burning, across Garn Station Alpha. Things were breaking down, and not just in the dream space. Researchers began reporting hallucinations. They saw children standing in corners, figures made of smoke peering from reflections, and doorways that shouldn't exist. But worst of all were the dreams they shared, dreams they hadn't accessed. Every night, they all saw the same thing. A human battlefield stretching endlessly under a red sky, rows of crosses. A flickering figure of a soldier standing at attention, a burning city behind him. The figure never spoke, until one night he did. "You wanted to see our minds?" he said in a voice that echoed like distant thunder. "Now you will remember them." That was the night the first Solari ship went dark. The Void Whisper, a long-range psychic relay vessel, stopped transmitting. When the command ship arrived days later, they found it drifting, lights out. Entire Crew 242 of the best-trained telepaths in the galaxy were catatonic, their eyes wide and unblinking. No wounds, no signs of struggle, just absolute crushing silence, and scrawled across every interior wall, written in perfect Terran English, "This is your mind now. Dreamfire protocol had failed. Severing the links wasn't enough." Something had followed them back through. The neural tether, whatever the Zalari had triggered within the human subconscious, had latched on like a predator tracking scent. Only it wasn't hunting them. It was learning, the psychic thing. Zalari had awakened, be it a collective defense instinct, a dormant human psychic field, or something even older, had begun adapting. At first, it responded only when they entered human dreams. Now, it entered theirs. Dream space was no longer territory to explore. It had become hostile terrain. Whenever a Zalari slept, they risked being pulled into landscapes not their own, dark forests lit by distant artillery fire, burning libraries, labyrinthian cities, echoing with sirens and screams. They began to fear sleep. But waking was no better. Some Zalari began to hear voices, not internal, not imagined. Real alien voices, human voices, whispering fragments of language directly into their minds. At first, they spoke of memories, loss, betrayal. Then they changed. "We warned you. This is not your world. Run." Desperation crept into the minds of Zalari leadership. The Council of Mental Order declared a galactic quarantine on humanity. No further contact, no psychic engagement, no dream incursions. Earth was to be treated as a psychic death zone, but the quarantine came too late. By then, some humans had started to dream back. On Earth, a small number of sensitive individuals, empaths, lucid dreamers, psychics long dismissed by science, began seeing things too. They spoke of glowing threads stretching into stars, of echoes returning from the void. Some reported knowing things they shouldn't, alien languages, technological diagrams, names of Zalari stations. Earth-based unpsychotronic cores, a shadow agency left dormant since the Cold War, stirred into action. A warning was drafted and sent across the known galaxy. Cease all psychic interaction with human minds. You opened a door, or not prepared for what's behind it. It was ignored by most. By the time it was taken seriously, the psychic plague had spread. What had started as a stealth operation now looked like a collapse. Ships went missing. Entire cities on Zalari worlds fell silent. In some places, infrastructure turned on its own people. A is playing Terran lullabies. Defense systems triggering dream-based protocols. Holograms of human children flickering in the dark. The worst came when the Zalari began seeing humans. In their own dreams, not projections, not memories. Visitors, one Zalari commander revered and unshakable, snapped during a council meeting. He screamed a single word over and over before ending his own life. "He's awake." No one knew who he was, but in their deepest sleep, under layers of mental fortification, the remaining Mindwalkers now all saw the same face, a human man standing. In the fog, surrounded by ghostly soldiers from every era of Terran history, he did not move. I by the third week, the one-sprout world of Garn, home to the Zalari's greatest psychic minds and revered for centuries as the heart of mental superiority in the galaxy, become a graveyard of silence. No ships moved above its skies. No signals left its atmosphere. The telepathic network that once connected 1,000 Zalari minds now buzzed only with static and fragments of Earth's languages. Hold the line. Dig deep. The mind is the battlefield. Inside the capital city of Shalek, the last functioning Min-Link chamber burned. Not with fire, but with something invisible, a war waged on thought itself. Researchers collapsed mid-link, shrieking about watchers behind the sky, and wars inside the blood. No one could shut off the dream tethers in time. They hadn't realized the link was to dash way. It wasn't just a psychic invasion anymore. It had become contagion. Each Mindwalker, exposed to the dream defense system, carried fragments back with them. Not just images, but entire constructs. Living mental organisms built from collective trauma, emotion, and survival instinct. These things spread across Zalari minds like wildfire, adapting, infecting, overriding. One researcher, in a lucid moment before her mind cracked, described it best. "We touch their roots, not their thoughts. Their roots go down too deep. We can't see the bottom, and something at the bottom is awake." Meanwhile, Earth began to respond, not with warships, not with retaliation, with containment, buried in old Cold War bunkers beneath Siberia and Arizona. Humanity activated a forgotten relic, the Somnish-Healed Protocol, a dormant psychic defense grid designed decades ago by Terran intelligence agencies who suspected alien interference might one day come through dreams. At the time, it had been dismissed as paranoia. Now, it was Earth's greatest firewall. Somnishield pulsed across the globe, isolating and reinforcing every human mind linked to the Zalari network. Frequencies shifted. Dreams were hardened. Lucid dreamers, psychics, and certain children were guided not directly, but by a mysterious push in their minds, as if Earth itself had recognized the threat and was adapting faster than anyone could explain. In the mind of an 8-year-old boy in New Delhi, a dream changed midstream. He had been flying over mountains, then saw a silver figure falling from the sky. It wasn't human. It had no eyes, but it whispered in a terrified voice, "Let us go." He didn't answer. He simply imagined a cage of iron thought slamming shut around the being. Across the galaxy, another Zalari psychonode collapsed. Brain dead. The feedback loop was tightening. The dream invaders had entered thinking they were gods walking through glass, and now they couldn't find the exit. More Zalari cities went dark. Their psychic relays flickered with strange audio distortions, human voices overlaid with static. Whispers of forgotten Earth battles, lullabies in extinct languages. Some relays even emitted coordinates to Terran memorial sites. Broadcast only the rhythmic thump of a marching drum. The Galactic Council demanded answers. Garn never responded, because Garn, once proud, once mighty, had fallen, not by weapon, not by fleet, but by the dreams of a species evolved under the weight of its own nightmares. Earth remained silent. No official statement. No retaliation. Didn't need to act, because the Zalari had already lost, and in their last hours, they began to realize something humans had always known. The mind is not a safe place. Not when shaped by a world like Earth. Not when fear, love, rage, memory, instinct, and willpower fuse into a single, terrifying defense mechanism that evolves with every threat. They had wandered too deep into the jungle of the human subconscious. Now the jungle was awake, and it hunted back. The war was never declared. There were no peace treaties, no public negotiations, battlefields marked by flags or the ruins of cities. And yet entire civilizations were shattered, all within the silent corridors of the mind. What remained? Of the Zalari High Thought Council gathered in a sealed stasis, chambered deep beneath the surface of a moon called Vurix Prime, only 7 remained, the rest either lost to insanity, burned out by psychic collapse, or turned into comatose husks, endlessly repeating Earth phrases they never learned. The Council's last message, sent in encrypted pulses to the Galactic Assembly, was grim and chilling. Do not enter their minds. Do not dream of Earth. Do not speak of what lies beneath their thoughts. They are not just thinkers, they're survivors, and they remember everything. The Galactic Council issued an emergency interspecies edict soon after. Humanity's subconscious is now classified as a classy forbidden zone. No telepathic, empathic, or dream interfacing contact is permitted with Homo sapiens under penalty of planetary quarantine. It was the first time in recorded galactic history that an entire species' thoughts had been declared a threat. Earth never issued a response. They didn't need to. The humans had done nothing more than sleep. Yet in that sleep, they had revealed a truth the galaxy had never seen, that minds evolved on a death world were not like others. Where other species dreamed of safety or harmony, humans dreamed of resistance. Their minds were labyrinths lined with ancestral trauma, sharpened by millennia of warfare, betrayal, raw willpower. The Zalari had assumed telepathy was control, but with humans, thought was terrain. Dangerous terrain. And they had entered without a map. The thing they awakened, call it a defense mechanism, a dream echo, or something older, wasn't a singular being. It had no center. It wasn't alive in the traditional sense. It was emergent. A consequence of billions of humans dreaming for thousands of years under constant threat. The same survival trait that made them adapt to any battlefield had made its way into their unconscious realm. When the Zalari entered their dreams, humanity's oldest instincts recognized them as invaders, and it fought, and it won. Some human scientists and covert agencies began to piece the story together. They saw the dying psychic signals, the broken alien ships, the collapse of Garn's network. No public statements were made, no parades were held. But behind closed doors, the Psychic Defense Corps concluded the truth. They came to conquer our minds. They left their own behind. As for the humans affected, the lucid dreamers, the sensitives, many recovered. A few still whispered things in languages no human should know. A child in Brazil drew a perfect map of Garn's planetary structure from a dream. A retired soldier in Ukraine wept as he remembered holding the line for someone who never existed. A mindwalker who tried to plead for mercy inside a collapsing Tremscap. He told the doctors, "I didn't hate him, but the war wasn't mine to end." In time, the stories faded into obscurity. But in the deeper corners of the galaxy, civilizations whispered of it still. The Mind War, the war that was never seen. The war no army could fight. The war that ended an empire, shattered a species, and forever changed how the galaxy viewed the humans of Earth. It wasn't their weapons. It wasn't its technology. It was their resilience of thought, the ability to suffer, to dream through. Terror, to emerge from horror stronger than before. To turn pain into myth, loss into strength, memory into armor. And in the end, the message that rang loudest from the minds of Earth was not one of pride or rage. It was warning. We didn't want this war. But if you walk into our minds again,